Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our special council meeting for Thursday, December the 11th, 2025. I'll call the meeting to order at 5 p.m. First item on the agenda, under agenda item 1.1, Land Acknowledgement. The town of Coldell acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot peoples of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot peoples past, present, and future while recognizing their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The town of Coldell is also home to Métis District 1 Foothills. Agenda item 1.2, conflict of interest declaration, pecuniary and non-pecuniary. Are there any in the room this afternoon? None declared, thank you. Moving on to agenda item 2.1, the acceptance of the special council meeting agenda for December 11th, 2025. Are there any additions or deletions? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council adopt a special council meeting agenda for December 11th, 2025 as presented? Councillor Reese makes that motion. I'll take the vote. And that motion is carried. Thank you. Jumping ahead to new business under agenda item 8.1, we have meeting number 2 regarding our 2026-2030 capital budget. And we have our senior manager of capital finance, Tim Koba, presenting. And we also have our chief financial officer, Ashley Crabb, presenting with Tim as well. So whenever the two of you are ready, go ahead.
Okay, thank you, Mayor and Council, for being here tonight. As well, thank you to my colleagues who are here behind me. I'm hoping I don't have to rely on them too much this meeting, but I'm very happy that they are here. So there are 2 objectives for this meeting. Actually, there will be 3 items in tonight's meeting. First, I would like to take an opportunity for administration to provide a response to the inquiries from the December 8th meeting. Second, and this is the new one, is that I would like to provide a summary on, a summary of our reserves, summary of our grants, debentures, funding sources, just to give you a quick update where things stand as of, the end of Q3 / we're kind of in the middle of Q4 right now. So that will be the second item. And then finally, the last item, which is kind of the main point of tonight, would be to go through the 2026 to 2020 or 2026 to 2030 capital budget proposed items, and to approve those items. It can be on a line-on-line basis, however, whatever council is most comfortable with, just to provide direction to administration on which items we need to include in the 2026 to 2030 budget. From there, once we have that direction, we'll try and prepare a capital budget document that can be presented to council as early as the regular council meeting on Monday, December 15th. Okay, so the first item is I would like to address some of the questions that were asked at the previous meeting on December 8th. The first question, I'll just address them in order as they are in the staff report. And I'll kind of briefly summarize what the reply is for each inquiry, and then council can ask questions if they want further information, or if they're okay with that, then we'll continue moving on. So the first was the skid steer. So that was to replace the skid steer. And there was a question on, are there options on leasing versus buying? So we did get some quotes from our supplier. Based on that, if we commit to a lease, now these are on 5-year terms. If we commit to a lease without a buyout, that means you don't own the asset at the end of the term. The cost of that is about $72,000 or 72, just under 73. Now, if you exercise the buyout, so you pay the extra $30,000 or whatever that difference is at the end of the lease to purchase that item, the total cost of that becomes $101,000. To simply just own the asset and to replace it every few years as operations has been doing. The cost is just the purchase price of that asset, so it's 85,000. Okay, so with that, I guess the most.
One second, Tim, Councillor Chapman had a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and through to Tim. I appreciate seeing these numbers here, and thank you so much for bringing these back forward. My only question to you is, with regards to all three options, would that be for a 5-year term?
Yes.
I think the operations would prefer to have a 5-year life cycle out of that machine, regardless of whether you buy, lease, or buy it out.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Chapman, we use 5 years for all three scenarios,
Okay.
just to give a more comparable number.
Thank you.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So just as a follow-up, what is that asset worth after 5 years? Because if it's not ours and we paid $71,000, but if it's not worth $14,000 in the end, is it cheaper to lease, and then you know what your monthly payment is because it's on warranty? You don't have any maintenance on it, so you know for the next 15, 20 years it's going to cost you X number of dollars per month, but you've always got a new piece of equipment.
Maybe it would be good for Terry to come and talk into the microphone and answer that.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So the numbers provided by Tim were just for a 5 year, just to give you a comparison. We would want to lease this for 3 years, as we are doing currently, with selling it back to the distributor and getting a new one. Same process. One would be leasing, which is what we've kind of looked at here. The difference, though, is the cost per month or cost per year of leasing is about $20,000. If we were to take a 3 year lease, it's about $20,000 a year. So currently we own the unit we have. If we add $27,000 to it right now, we get a brand new unit. And then in 3 years, that number will be about $18,000 to $20,000. We get a brand new unit. We still have the capital in that unit, so that's why it's more of a value in that manner. Yes, we'll have a consistent cost if we release it per month or per year, but the cost per year is about $20,000 a year, or $20,000 a year in leasing costs. We are asking for 27 only because we left this one in our possession for 5 years instead of the 3. That's why it's a little bit, the depreciation value is only $58,000 right now.
Okay, assuming there are no more questions on the skid steer options, I'll move on to question number 2. So the question number 2 was, can we look at some options for a cottonwood fountain in the ponds along Highway 845? Now, the following note is from Russ Tanner, Director of Recreation and Community Services. I guess I could read this out. This item was not included.
Tim, I'm just going to stop you there because I'm
Yes.
going to ask Russ a question anyway, so you may as well come up and talk about it as well. No, you stay there, Tim. And just pull up another chair.
Okay, so I guess my version or my summary of this has been a capital budget item, the Cottonwood Fountain, not for the Highway 845, but the interior ponds that were done. That has been in the budget for a couple of years. It's been carrying forward each year. And the reason it was placed in the budget and to begin with was because there were some complaints reporting algae growth and an odor. So what Russ's department did is they treated the algae with chemicals, and the odor issue we haven't had any reports of any issues since that was done, and I believe that was done maybe a year or two ago. Now, since the algae issue has been resolved, I guess we kind of need some clarification on the main reasoning for a fountain at this location. If it's for aesthetic purposes, that could come back with a pretty wide range of costs depending on how big or nice you want to go, right? So that's kind of hard to know without some more information. However, if it is for odor or for algae growth, Russ has confirmed that has been taken care of. So I guess the question that will come out of this is, since we've replaced the interior cottonwood fountain ponds already to address some of the issues that were reported, that project is theoretically closed out by the end of 2025. So there would be a $45,000 remaining balance there. So the option here is, do we want to set aside the $45,000 and carry it forward to come up with a quote for to use it as part of this new project, which is the Cottonwood Fountain Ponds along Highway 845.
Thank you. So then a question to Russ, just to go over what Tim just mentioned. So since we brought the Cottonwood level back up to its current height or level, since that work was done, the algae, the odor is gone. The only other problem that we had was the kochia weeds, and now that the water level's up, a lot of those were looked after as well. So can you give us an update where we're at with that?
You bet. Yeah. No, Tim did a good job of explaining that a few years ago we did have some complaints of algae, and we did treat that. Simultaneously, we were also coming to the end of life for the interior fountains. Those interior fountains initially were quoted a little higher because there was going to be need to be a change with electrical services and things like that. That didn't end up happening. We actually were able to find fountains that worked, so substantially under budget. So the question comes back to the one on 845. Initially, we also had quotes like 2 years ago to be able to put 2 fountains in the 845 pond to also deal with some of the similar things. And what we're trying to show in this report is that since that time, we've replaced the 2 interior ponds. We haven't had an issue with algae since when the levels are proper in the pond. And so from a staff perspective, the only need for a fountain in the 845 would be aesthetic at this point. That would be the biggest benefit. And certainly some communities do put fountains in ponds for aesthetic reasons. So we would, in that circumstance, the questions back to council would then be I wouldn't be looking, or we could look at 2 fountains still, or we could look at 1 fountain, which would substantially lower the price because there would only be 1 electrical service too.
So as you mentioned, and this is what we would call, or Kyle used to like to use, it's a nice to have, not a must have.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And if we were to put one in at the Cottonwood Pond, the ones that were at the by the playground, those 2 fountains there, you know, the ones I'm talking about.
Yes. Yeah.
So those were fundraised for, and they were paid for by a community group. So they weren't originally installed by the town, but the town maintains them. So if we were to do something at the Cottonwood Pond and put a fountain in there as a nice to have, that doesn't stop the people that live at the Parkside Pond wanting the same thing. That's correct?
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. There's a question from Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I think you addressed some of my questions with regards to the funding side of it. The question through to Tim, or through to Russ, if I may, with regards to algae and mosquito larvae, and that, I mean, that seems to be the biggest complaints, the largest complaints we've heard. And my question to you then do you see that as an annual issue, or because of the past number of years when we had drought, that seemed to be a bigger issue? So I guess my part of it moving forward, I mean, obviously we could possibly get into another drought cycle again where we might encounter these things. So the question of a fountain may come back up again if we were to, put this off and wait for some support from the community.
Yeah, so if I understand your question correctly, certainly you've identified that it also depends on climate and weather and what happens. There are other options other than fountain, and that's chemical treatment. We've chemically treated that pond one time in my time being here in 5 years, only had to once. And so that might give you a little bit of context there. And then through my experience up in Brooks and the wetlands and things, there was mosquito issues quite regularly. We found that in the ponds that had quite a few Canadian geese and movement and things like that, there to be less of an issue with mosquitoes. And so I don't know that a fountain would drastically change a mosquito issue. And to date, I'm not aware of a mosquito concern being brought up from that area anywhere. But yeah, that doesn't mean it hasn't. I'm just not aware of that.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan, through to us. So similarly to what Councillor Chapman just referred to, I believe that this could come back as well. Thank you for your report and all the work you guys put into this as well, by the way. But I spoke to many of the residents around that pond, as did many councillors during the campaigning, and one of their major concerns is the stagnant water and the smell, even with the water at the correct level. So I'm thinking it's going to come back regardless, but if there's other avenues that we can look at, that'd be also worth our time, I believe. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, continue, Tim, please.
Thank you. Item number 3 is rank level importance for each capital item that was presented on Monday. I will skip this one for now and revisit it when after we do the Q3 update on Q3 update summary. So number 4, we have bring revised in-house budget options for the gazebo. So that was attached to the staff report. I'll just basically summarize. This is for 2 gazebos built in-house. The wood option is $32,000, and the metal option is the $70,000 that was presented on Monday. Okay, assuming no questions on the gazebos. The next question, question number 5 was, does the Field Pro have GPS like the Line Painter? I'll just provide a simple answer, and that is no. Any questions on that one?
Nope.
Okay, item number 6, speed issue on 16th Ave. I also attached a slide prepared by Dustin, and that is the 16th Ave traffic next steps.
Is there any follow-up questions for Dustin, or what we found in the package suffice? I don't see any questions, so go ahead. Well, Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just maybe a broad stroke question with regards to with regards to the gazebos. My only question is, regardless of price, is that we would want to ensure that that aesthetically that they really look good. Don't want them to look cheap, or something that we would actually be looking at replacing or rebuilding or adapting or changing in in a few years. So that would be my only concern, is just something that's going to look good, that the public who attend these events here would really appreciate the work that goes into them. And I don't think, and I know that some of it's relative to cost, but I want to ensure that they do look great.
I'll go ahead and try to answer your question, Councillor Chapman, the so the visuals that we've included in those slides are fairly representative of what they would look like. Option one, obviously quite a bit cheaper, essentially largely just due to the fact that it's made out of wood, so we can capitalize on our facility enhancement specialists. I mean, there's considerations too with metal having longer lifespan. It's a different aesthetic. Some people like wood, some people like metal. The reason the 70,000 was originally presented was just because that was the original design. It is a more premium, so I might like that option more, but ultimately there's a million different ways we can design it. So if there's further direction from council, somewhere in between there's definitely more options on the table, but this is intended to kind of give us a spectrum of lower end versus higher end. But I would still, in my opinion, say that the cheaper option would still meet the design aesthetic of the space.
Okay, thank you. And with that, I'll assume that the questions from Monday have been answered. Okay, so the next item I'd like to go over is the summary of our reserves, debt, grants, etc. So I will start here. So first, I just want to thank Mayor and Council for requesting this information. It shows responsible fiscal management, and yeah, I might explain some things in here that you may already know. The intended audience here is the viewer at home or someone who might be watching this for the first time. Okay, so we'll start with debt. So long-term debt. Debentures are typically used to fund long-lived capital assets and large-scale infrastructure upgrades and replacements. The idea is to pass on the cost of capital assets with long lives to future generations. And I'll go through here. Our long-term debt currently is just over $20 million. Okay, the debt limit, which is set by the MGA, is 1.5 times revenue. Okay, so we're at about 50% of our debt capacity. On the other side of that, you have the debt servicing costs. Now that's your interest payments. So currently we are at about 64% of our service on debt, and the limit on that is about 25% of your revenues. Okay, now debentures, I just want to go into a little bit more detail here just to kind of highlight what makes up that 20 million, just so you have a good idea.
And Tim, just before you continue, Councillor Avery has a question.
Okay.
Thanks, Tim. So just for clarity for myself, so that $20 million, does that include stuff that we've already got in our budget, for instance, the water reservoirs and stuff like that, or is that going to be on top of this 20 million?
Yes, so I'll show you right on this next tab here. I hope it's showing on the screen there. Okay. Oh, yeah, sorry. No, this is I'm bad for this. Okay, so this is our, really condensed debenture schedule that we use. I just want to highlight here that these items in red here, we paid off 4 debentures in 2025. Okay, so those debentures are no longer on our schedule. Our oldest debt is from 2011, and you can see the end date of those. They mature or they end in 2031 and 2033. I just want to highlight the ones that have been added since 2019, so that's 6 years ago. We have the multi-use recreation center, we have the fire hall expansion, the sewer lagoons, the rail spur land, and then you can see here at the bottom, I've included these. This is the line of credit that we have that we use for the rail spur, and here's a potable water reservoir. And the reason why it's not in this schedule is we just haven't received the formal certificates yet that spell out what the specific details of that debenture, but that debenture was pulled in the summer, so it is included in that total. And the reason why it's off a little bit is because this is, I'm comparing closing balances with December payments in here, but this schedule here doesn't have that in there. So, okay. so yes, to answer your question, Councillor Avery, the water reservoir is in there. The sanitary trunk line is in there, even though we haven't pulled that debt yet. These are just estimates. But yes, those numbers are being included in the debt limit calculations that you're seeing. Okay. And this was prepared by the previous CFO, and I just thought I'd throw it in here as a nice, well, not nice, but just as like so you can see where the debt limit has been over the last, over a span. So from 2022 to 2029, you can see what the projections are. And so these are estimates done by the CFO, the previous CFO. And you can see that these numbers are very close, right? It's just a matter of, timing differences likely. So you can see from here, I tried to put in a graph, the spike you're going to see in like 2025, 2026, when we pull that water and the sanitary trunk line debt. And then over the next 4 years, that will progressively go down. And by 2029, you're looking at roughly 30, 33, 35% maybe. Oh no, it says right here, 32.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Through to Tim. So based on what you're showing us here and all of the asks in the budget, are you pretty confident that we'll maintain that little tiny bit of wiggle room in between like higher and lower and stuff? And you're not concerned that this is going to present us with a debt that we can't attain or handle?
Thank you for the question, Councillor Reese. Yes, I'm confident in these numbers, and unless something significant comes down the line, there's no reason to expect this to be any different. I have yes, and so these debenture payments are actually entered into the future year budgets based on what the current debt is and what the expected payments are. Yes, and we are also monitoring cash flows and everything else that usually come with the increased debt levels. So we're good. Yeah.
Councillor Reese.
Oh, sorry. I just want to add on also that the requests that you're looking at tonight, or that we're asking you to look at, none of those are funded through debt. Okay, so I'll move on.
Just one sec.
Oh, okay.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you again. So if they're not funded through debt, they're funded through reserves. How much is this going to drain our reserves? If this budget was all approved the way it's presented, each one of the categories, how much is that going to drain our reserves, and what are we putting into those reserves on an annual basis to recuperate those costs?
Thank you for the question. We'll get to that one. The reserves is right here, so it's in the blue. So when we get there, we'll we'll talk about that. Okay. Oh, okay. Is that better? Okay, I apologize. Okay, so with that, I'll move on to grants. So grants. We're looking at two main capital grants that we receive, and those are the Canada Community Building Fund and the Local Government Fiscal Framework. Maybe I can make this a little bigger. All right. So you can see, well, just for, when I prepared this, I didn't bother to try and estimate what the increase would be each year, but this is roughly where what we would expect to receive, right, each year. And you can see here we allocate those to capital projects based on funding requirements, and some of these projects, extend out into future years. They're multi-year projects, and although there are other grant opportunities out there, we do have a team, and Spencer has a nice grant tracking spreadsheet where we're looking out in the future for future grants as well. So we're staying on top of what grants are available, what grants are coming down, which ones we can use to apply for projects, So that's all happening as well. Oh, sorry. Are there any questions on grants?
There is not.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so now we're into reserve.
Sorry, Councillor Chapman.
Thank you, Mayor. More just an observing question, and maybe Kaylin can answer this one. The LGFF grant, you've got it as capital. Is there also an operating grant through LGFF?
There is an operating portion. I'm just not 100% sure what that number is. I haven't, yeah. Okay, so for reserves, now this is like when Kyle used to present in the past, this is what he always referred to as the piggy bank. So it's like the savings accounts. It's money from annual reserves that council can set aside for many different reasons. There's no strict guidance on what you should use it for, what you shouldn't. We separate out our reserves into, you have operating, we're using internal loans, and as well capital reserves. So those three are the main how it's broken out for reserves. Operating reserves can be used as a buffer for emergencies or in budget shortfalls. It can also be used as a way to provide tax relief and to smooth out tax increases when expenses like think of snow clearing fluctuate year over year. So that's kind of what the purpose of those reserves is. Internal loans are basically future revenue sources that we expect to receive, but we have committed to a current capital project that's being built or has been built. A good example of that is the revenues for the Cold Ale Strong campaign. As we receive those, it drives that balance down. And the last category, the one that we should focus on tonight, is the capital reserves. So capital reserves are used to fund specific future capital purchases or projects, including large-scale infrastructure upgrades and replacements. You can see we have various capital reserves. Construction projects are specific projects we set money aside for. These are utilities projects. Offsite levies are restricted to certain projects based on agreements. Facilities, these are both general and specific, based on what is in the budget. The general one is more for like roads and pathways and for general use. And then the fleet equipment is specific for, to replace future equipment and vehicles. Okay, so when you total up the capital reserves, you get 15 million. What I tried to do with that 15 million is I tried to project what we would need to pull from our reserves in 2026, and this is that number. Now, this number is just for the items that are carrying forward from 2025. So these are projects that are in progress, are still aren't finished, and still need to pull from reserves. So these are items that were already approved in the 2025 to 29 budget. This amount here, 648,000. This is the total of the 2026 budget requests that were made on Monday. And I'll just briefly show.
Just before you do that, Councillor Avery asked a question.
Can you, on this spreadsheet, you're showing Fire VNE Reserve $1.257 million. Where is that on there? Because this shows that we specifically have a line for it. Is it?
It would be included in here. We do have a reserve spreadsheet. I'm not sure if council is interested in viewing the whole thing, but right, like you have your future hiring vehicle ending balance there, 1.257. Oh, sorry, it's so small. I'm sorry. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, these numbers all tie into what we currently have as of Q3, and I tried to estimate for Q4.
That answer your question, Councilor Avery? Okay, thank you.
Okay. So this 648,000, I just want to show that this ties to what was presented on Monday. So that 648,000 is there. So when you take the sum of all of the new requests, that's these green highlighted ones. These are all the items that council had never seen before, and we had presented on them on Monday. The sum of all of those, when you back out the items that the town isn't responsible for, or amounts that would be included as part of another budget, the number you get is 648. So that's just to kind of show you that if you approved every item on the list, this is what it would look like. And then below that, we have an estimated transfers to reserves out of the budget, which historically has been on average about $2 million. So and then you have your estimated balance at the end of 2026 after, assuming that everything's approved, or you transfer in the average. But these are just forecasts or just predictions, right? Okay. Any further questions on reserves?
Councilor Avery.
Thank you again. So in reality, we're dropping the reserves by 7 million, not 5 million, because we're taking next year's money that we're putting into reserves up to 2 million. So we're dropping it by 7 million in 1 year. Is that correct?
Yeah. So these are items that are already in progress. There's not much you can do about that number, but you are correct. Yeah.
Well, there is something we can do about it. Thank you.
Okay. And the last section here is cash investments and line of credit. I just thought it would be nice for council to see what's currently in our bank. This is current as of probably last week. So I can't imagine they would have changed very much. But this just goes to show you, all of the items I talked about, they kind of, they affect each other in ways that might not be obvious, but kind of makes sense. So if you increase debentures, you're increasing the cost of debt or interest payments. Then you're also, if you're reducing reserves, you're reducing the amount of investment income you can make or the amount that you have in investments. And then the more you draw down on your funding sources, it just increases the risk of just having that cash flow available to make those purchases when they need to be paid. So this is the.
Any follow-up questions for our presenter? Councilor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. Through to Tim. So I'm curious, this may be a little bit premature of a question in a way it's not, but how will this capital budget affect our operating budget next month when we have to deal with that?
Well, as I showed you in the reserves, we can fund the 2026 new asks out of the reserves, and as long as we're aware that we do need to replenish those reserves, right? As long as we're making sure we're putting in, what we usually do, this is kind of what the expected balance. Now, this is not to say that, you have to put in 2 million. That's council's choice. I was just using an average to get to a estimated ending balance. So the reserves, it really depends on what's happening in a municipality. If you're saving up for a big project and then you spend all that money, you're gonna see your reserves go down, right? So it's not a good sign of the wealth of a municipality, if I can say that. It's a financial planning tool that you use to plan for future expenses and that you use to kind of absorb the fluctuations you see year to year.
Thank you. Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Through to Tim. So as of today, we're into December right now. How will we be looking at the end of this year for servicing
what we have outstanding and operating in that.
Are you asking about potential surplus or deficit?
Yes, I am.
Okay, so maybe we have okay, so we have run some numbers that are current up to the end of Q3, and so that's September 30th. And at that point, we were estimating about one and a half, just over 1.5 million. But there are things that have happened since then, so that number might be different. But we're fairly confident that it will be at least that amount.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Okay. Is that if that's okay for the summary for Q3?
Galen has a question or comment.
Thank you. I just wanted to add that looking at the capital plan over the last couple of years, we've had to invest in a lot of expensive but critical infrastructure projects that have allowed us to facilitate different developments or industrial customers in Coaldale, and that in turn is going to create corresponding revenues in the next couple of years. So we've had to shell out a lot of money from our reserves, but with that, there are some corresponding revenue streams that'll be coming forward, and you'll begin to see those start around 28, and they'll likely be in at their peak at 2030. So although we did have to drain, and you'll see that in the graph, we had to incur debt, there is corresponding revenue that you'll see as well in those fiscal years.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions, so continue, please, Tim.
Thank you. Okay, so now we are on the main part of this presentation. So what I will do is I will answer question 3 real quick, where it was please rank the level of importance for each capital item. So there are several different ways that we could have approached this. The way that we chose was to classify the 2026 to 2030 capital budget items, to classify them into 4 distinct categories. Category 1 are those assets that are, critical in nature. There's a contractual element to them, or they're carrying forward from a previous year. These are items they're excluded from council deliberation to avoid possible litigation and or significant financial consequences. Now, council is always free to review those items and let us know if they feel that one item does not belong where we have put it. However, we are hoping that there's agreement on at least the majority of these items, and we can kind of go through that before we start to go individually on the category 3 items. Okay, but just to explain the different categories, that was category 1. Category 2 is service level continuity. Now, these items are necessary to maintain the current service levels that the council has set. Altering these will affect sustainability in the long run, could result in increased costs in the future when you have to replace it, or when you have to do additional maintenance, or you have to rehire staff to increase those service levels back up. It's not recommended to adjust these items unless council wishes to change the level of service that's being provided currently. Category 3 is the service level enhancement category. Now, the approval or denial of these items are being requested by administration tonight. So these items are more discretionary in nature. They're kind of like your nice to haves because they serve to enhance the levels of service provided to the community. Since these items are considered discretionary and their proposed funding source is through current reserves, administration's recommendation is to plan on replenishing those reserves out of a future surplus or out of future revenues.
Councillor Avery has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. So, Tim, can you explain to me your comment of change the level of service if we don't approve these items in these categories? By extending the life of a piece of equipment, that doesn't, in my mind, change the level of service. It just means we're getting the full life expectancy out of that piece of equipment. Before you started, we didn't do our capital asset management. So it's still a fairly new program.
Yep.
So to say a piece of equipment is only good for 15 years, how do we know that? First of all, it might be best practice, but maybe we maintain our equipment better. Maybe we service our equipment better. Maybe we don't have the road miles that other municipalities that we're comparing our asset management to is different than what Coaldale is doing. So I just want you to explain what you mean by changing the level of service. We don't approve the budget.
I appreciate your concern. And to answer your question, the reason why some of these items are in service level continuity is because these are replacements. If you decide not to replace an asset, you're basically, whether you push it down to a future year, the cost of that might go up. But if you totally scrap an item that is a replacement, that means that you no longer want to use that piece of equipment to do whatever it was designed to do. That's it. It's kind of a simplified approach, but I understand where you're going with the life cycle costs and maintenance and everything. But those are very detailed analysis that we just don't have time to, in a short turnaround, to be able to get into all that kind of detail. But yes, I can see your point on the.
Okay, thank you.
And then the last category that we have are placeholders. So these have no financial impact to the 2026 budget. These are placeholder items. Mainly they're equipment and vehicle that we have projected out to be replaced in future years. We will always bring back the current year to council for presentation, regardless whether they were a placeholder before or not. So those our recommendation is to not waste time looking at those items. However, we're open to moving things tonight here from one category to another if you feel something belongs in a different category.
Thank you. Any questions for our presenter on anything that he has shared? Councillor Avery.
Thank you. So 4B, second item, I think we can confidently say that piece is not 1.5, it's half of that. Is that correct?
Sorry, which item are you?
Rescue engine. We've got in our budget is 1.5, but I believe we can confidently say it's only 750,000.
Oh yes, okay. So I should explain myself a little bit better here as well. Now the reason why you're seeing the numbers here, it gets very complicated if I try to split out the town portion versus someone else's portion, or if it's funded through something else. This is just the total budget as they were in the 2025 to 29 budget. So the reason for that is so that I can have some kind of consistency in the working papers as we're progressing along. I want to make sure that a number doesn't change from one presentation to the next. So I have to make sure that I'm using the same numbers across the board, and the easiest way to do that is just to use what was originally approved.
Councillor Avery.
Okay, so as a follow-up then, so how do we see that come back in as an income? Does it go back into the capital? Does it go into operational reserve? Does it go into the capital reserve for vehicle? And how do we see that come back in? Because if we're approving this, to me it looks like we're approving 1.5 million, not half of that.
Yeah, no, I can kind of understand where you're going. We have, when we're building out the budget, we look at the opening reserve balances. And so, for example, if you, this is super tiny again. Okay, so here's that rescue engine, right? When we put it in the budget for 1.5, the town portion is 750. So when I break it out by funding source, I put 750 from reserves. Here's that reserve account. Here's all the items that we would pull from the reserves. And then I have an understanding of, are we underfunded or overfunded in that account? Now the process, or, we should consistently every year be looking at, replenishing reserves for items that we've purchased and all that, and looking into the future to see what we need to start building out for. But you'll have to forgive me. I'm kind of new at this role, so these are things that I have this idea in my head. This is how it should happen. But Yeah, I mean, when I put this together, I didn't just throw numbers in to be like, oh yeah, these we can just pull these out of reserves. We do know what the opening balance should be. We'll pull out all the items that are slated in there, and then we have a rough idea of where we are at the end.
Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just maybe a follow-up thought with regards to Councillor Avery's questions on the 1.5 million. So is our budget treating it as we're the buyer of that unit?
Yes, we would take ownership of that asset, and then you can see the partnership portion is right here.
Okay, and
So we recognize we include the full cost of that capital in our capital asset listing, and then we receive $750,000 as a contribution towards that asset, and that gets recognized on the financial statements.
okay, thank you. I was just wondering how that would reflect and considering what the county's budget for that would be as well. So they would have to reflect that 750,000 as a contribution to the town in
Yes.
one way or the other for the purchase. Okay, thank you.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you. Any other questions for our presenter? Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. So in category 2, 3D alley rebuild program, you've got 450,000 in the budget. Isn't that only 75, and then they're asking for more?
Yes, that is correct. Now, the reason I did that is to make this spreadsheet as clean as possible. So this is 90,000 over 5 years,
Okay,
and it's showing as one lump, some number in there. Yes, the amount that comes out in 2026 is 90,000, but I have captured that in when I showed you this number here. I've captured only 90,000 in here, right? I didn't pull 450,000 for that in this number. So
okay, thank you.
yeah.
Any other questions for our presenter? So then I'll ask Tim and Ashley how you wish us to proceed with this. So can we start with category 3 and chip away? Or did you want to start on a different category?
Maybe let's confirm whether or not we're okay with everything in the placeholder items category 1 and category 2, and then let's really go. Let's hit category 3 last.
Okay, so placeholders, the fire tender, and that's for 2027.
Yeah.
Is there anybody opposed to leaving that as a placeholder?
I don't know why it's in our budget when it's not ours.
So,
100% county doesn't have all the figures.
so Ashley has a comment for that?
Sure. Yeah.
Thank you. So the fire tender, what happens with that is the county does 100% of the contributions, but it becomes our asset. So we have to record that on our book. So essentially it'll be the revenue that comes in from the county and then we record it as the asset. So we have to essentially put that in our capital budget.
Councillor Avery.
So Clayton, correct me if I'm wrong, but there hasn't been an agreement negotiated on capital items yet, has there, with the county? Like what I read, it was all an operational budget. Right. Okay.
So again, this is strictly a placeholder.
Could I just add?
Yes.
There is a capital schedule added to the operating budget for forecasting purposes, but the Joint Emergency Services Committee still has to deliberate the timing of when those assets are ultimately purchased. But there is a schedule that serves as a planning tool in that extension agreement.
That answer your question? Councillor Avery?
Through to Kalen. So when I read that agreement today and I looked at the appendices, all of that stuff was crossed out, including days of replacement. So are we prematurely putting this in our budget? Is it something that we can put in the 2026 deliberations as an earmark? Because I don't think they're going to replace it in 2026 if it's going to be a 2027 asset, and it'll probably take 18 months or 12 months to get built. So it might be a 2028 asset. But what I recall reading through that today, there was no replacement years on that equipment.
Further to discussion, I'm just pulling it up now. So in the most recent draft, the capital schedule was crossed out, but then under Appendix B, there was a revised and updated planning schedule, and that would be on page 14 of that agreement. So it has the list of the apparatus, the life cycle, estimated purchase value, estimated replacement year, and replacement cost. I think you have to scroll above the crossed out table.
What page is that?
14. And I apologize, there's so many track changes on there. There is a section that is crossed out, but there's also one that is on there for planning purposes. Given that the agreement's only 3 years, some of this could theoretically be moot, but it is a tool to help the Joint Emergency Services Committee forecast within the currency of the agreement the different apparatus that is forecasted for each replacement year based on age.
Councilor Avery, I'll wait for your comment. You're good? Okay, thank you. So back to placeholders. The first item, 1F, fire tender. So again, all these items that I'm going to be referring to, none of them have to do with our 2026 budget. So the fire tender, that's 100% county, and our CFO explained the funding stream for that. Is anybody opposed to have that stay on as a placeholder? Thank you. So that's a yes. And the second item, item 4C, the Northwest Development Utility Line relocation for storm. Do we need Jason to come and explain that again, or is everybody familiar, remember that item? I don't see anybody that needs to have a refresher, so is there anybody opposed to that one? So that's a yes. Item 3, 1G, the command vehicle for the chief. That's a 2027 budget item for 100,000. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes, thank you. And under that, we have the CPO pickup truck for bylaw for $85,000. And that's a 2027 purchase as well from our annual tax funded reserves. Anybody opposed to them? That's a yes, thank you. And then we have the arborist truck, the boom auger replacement for parks. That's a $260,000 item. And again, that's in our 2027 budget and our annual and funded by our annual tax funded reserves. Is there anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Pickering has a question on that one.
Thank you, Mayor. Was that not in last year's budget? If I believe so.
Oh, I'm sorry. So the question, just to be clarified, the question was, did we present on that last year?
And
Yes, it was presented on last year. And if I remember correctly, you guys had asked about even like lease options and rental options and things like that. And currently what we do is we do rent lifts when required. And we've even this year done some contract work where that would have been used. But we weren't planning on, it was pushed to 2027 based off my recollection of last year's comments and decisions.
do you have any idea what you spent on rent or leases this year? Ballpark?
I don't. I know that in years past it's been anywhere between 12 to 15,000,
Okay, thank you.
but I don't know last year. Sorry. Yeah.
And then, just to reaffirm what you already said, this truck would be used for more than trimming trees.
Yes. Yeah. It's done for hanging lights, trimming trees. Those are the two main things. And I think Terry also, we work with him on a few of the things that his staff may use for hanging baskets and banners down Main Street.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you. So, Russ, if you may, how many hours then will this truck be used a week, a month, a year? What season? Summer, fall, winter, year round? Like, I'm still not convinced $250,000 is a good investment. So, how many hours a day and how many hours a year do we think we would use it?
I don't have that calculated yet. How many hours a day or how many hours a year? I can just tell you the work that's being done. And right now, because we rent a lift, we coordinate with Public Works to be able to make sure that we use it the most efficiently. What we have stated in the past, however, is that if we had this type of equipment, and both Terry and I have, let me know if I'm speaking out of turn, have struggled with whether or not we're at tipping point yet, based on the information that you've done. We have looked at those in the past. I just am not prepared to present on them here, but we don't know that we're at tipping point, and that's why we've been very much in favor of pushing this off at this time. This year, we were able to get out and get some quotes also from some local contract services to do some of that work. So I'll actually have some new numbers even after this year is complete. But we do use that strategically when lights are going up and also when tree maintenance is needed.
And give an opportunity for Terry to also speak to this, what he would be able to use it for.
Pardon me. As Russ has mentioned, what we were looking at was maybe changing the utility of this truck to a little more of a well-rounded vehicle that you could use for some of the buildings we have now that are fairly tall that you could get up around using a smaller truck that you can actually use within the traffic and the confines of some of the spaces. So we would use them for Main Street for the decorating of the lights, hanging up Christmas banners, anything where we're going to need to be up a little higher. Some of the inside the rec center and stuff like that. If we had a small enough vehicle, we could actually use it inside there. So that was the thought. But this has been put on hold because we're reevaluating what we need to do or what we are going to do going forward. That's why it was pushed back to 27. And we'll come back with a plan on this if we want to proceed ahead with it. But that's, Russ and I will get together on that.
Okay. Just don't quite move yet. We have two questions here for you, Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor. I just got one question. So if this truck was purchased, what are you looking at for life expectancy? You got some, like asset management's going to say, what, 10 years, 15 years? No? Or there's no...
No, it would be 20 years. Most of our fleet vehicles are 20 years. A few are exceptions to that, but this would be 20 years. Now, depending on the lift and the crane depending on what kind of life that would have. But it would be 15, 20 years.
Just to follow up on that, I'm experienced with these boom trucks and that, so you'll have to build in your budget if you buy this every year. It will need inspected in Calgary, I'm pretty sure, or Lethbridge by somebody. So just figure that into your costs too, just so you know. Okay, thank you.
We currently have 2 booms that we every year. So
Councillor Chapman, Councillor Pickering knocked you out of the queue. So if you want to turn your mic on again, please. Go ahead with your question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor, and maybe through to Terry, if I may. This is the first time that this has been brought forward in this budget cycle for this year. So I'll rephrase it. This is the first time I've seen this tonight. So obviously, as a placeholder, I do remember you speaking about the different examples, I think last year, the year before, on different types of equipment that you were proposing to use. And of course, there might be a lot of opportunities for something like this to be used more in a versatile setting rather than just for one particular unit. So my only question to you is, this is just the first time that this is showing up as a placeholder?
no, it's been in previous budgets. It's just brought up tonight because we got the 5-year capital budget here, so it would be in there. The boom truck is due for replacement, but the question really becomes, what do we really need? And we might be in a little bit of a change here, so we want to review that before something or anything comes back, because as you said, we could use articulating booms, which we rent a lot right now, or a proper truck with a actual man lift in it. So we just want to leave the placeholder in there. Doesn't mean that at that time we'll have a proposal, but
Thank you. So once again, we're not going to purchase this truck this year, or next year. This is a placeholder for 2027, and it can come up again at a future budget meeting. With that being said, is there anybody opposed to leaving it on the placeholder list? So that's a yes. Thank you. Moving on to the museum, the exterior painting and sealing for $40,000. That's a 2027 placeholder, and the funding will come out of the museum reserve. Is there any more information required for council before I ask the question on that one? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed to the work at the museum? That's a yes. Thank you. Moving on to Highway 3 and 30th Street geometric improvements, and that's a 2028 placeholder for $3.6 million. Is there any further information required by members of council? Is there anybody opposed to leaving that as a placeholder? That's a yes. Thank you. Moving on to the Koba tractor, and that's for operations. That's $175,000 price tag and a 2028 placeholder, and it comes out of our annual tax funded reserves. Anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. Thank you. Moving on to the community peace officer pickup truck for BYLAWS. That's an $87,000 placeholder for 2028, and that comes out of our annual tax funded reserves. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That is a yes. Thank you. And then we have the international medium duty replacement for operations for $205,000. That's a 2029 annual tax funded reserve placeholder. Anybody opposed to leaving that one? Thank you. That's a yes. And then we have or John Deere 3520 Parks tractor replacement for the Parks Department for $115,000. That is a 2029 placeholder funded out of our annual tax funded reserves. Anybody opposed to leaving that one on? That's a yes, thank you. And the last one is a tandem truck for operations for a 2031 placeholder for the fleet. It comes out of the fleet and general equipment reserves. Anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes, thank you. And while we're on the subject, seeing how everything was left on as a placeholder, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council approve the placeholders for the 2027-2030 capital budget as presented? Councillor Chapman makes that motion. I'll call for the question. And that motion is carried. Councillor Avery was opposed. Thank you. Which one you want to do now, Tim? Okay. So category 1, the critical contractual carryovers. First item is the Wildland F350 truck for our fire services. And that's a 2026 ask for $225,000. And again, that includes the county's portion as well. And that will be funded out of our fire reserve. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. Second item, the library roof replacement for $70,000. That's budgeted for 2026, and it's going to be funded $35,000 by the library board, $22,000 out of the library reserve, and $13,000 out of the 2025 surplus. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. The arena ceiling and lights replacement for $181,000. That's budgeted for 2026. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. Highway 3 and 8th Street signalization for $1.5 million. That's a 2026 ask, and the funding is a split 2025 approved budget for 30th Street. Anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. The 17th Street upgrades for 2026 budget. That's for $1,550,000. Anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Beekman is opposed to that one. You have a question?
Isn't that 17th Street upgrades already done? Or is it complete?
Jason, if you would like to come up and speak to that, please.
So I think per the slides last night, 1.55 is the previously approved budget. And I'd suggest the project's approximately 75% complete. So that's just an ask to basically finish the remaining 25% with the previously approved budget and no extra.
So it's basically on budget, is what you're saying. There's no ask for no more.
Well, we did discuss some of that in closed, right?
But we're still only sticking with our 1.5. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. With that being said, I'll ask the question one more time regarding the the 17th Street upgrades for $1,550,000, in which Jason Siemens explained that the majority of the project is done. Is there anybody opposed to that one? Councillor or Deputy Mayor Beekman's opposed. Moving on to, I should say that's a yes. Moving on to Highway 845 and 30th Avenue intersection upgrades. That's a $470,000 ask out of our 2026 budget. And the funding is $200,000 through LGFF and our 2026 funding model for LGFF, and $200,000 from our offsite levies and $70,000 added from LGFF again. Does anybody need further explanation on that? Seeing none, is there anybody opposed to that? That one is a yes. Item 4B, Northwest Development Utility Line relocation. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. Next item, the rescue vehicle, 1.5 million coming out of our 2026 budget. Again, that is Lethbridge County money involved for that one. Is there anybody opposed for that one? That one is a yes. Next item is the Malloy 2B storm for 4.9 million. And that project is well on its way as well. Is there anybody opposed for the remaining funding for that one? That's coming out of our 2026 budget. That's a yes. And next item is the South Kolda Regional Stormwater Management Facility for $5,330,000. That's coming out of our 2026 budget, the remaining amount. And that's the project that's straight south of the Cottonwood Pond that's currently being worked on. Anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. And then our potable water reservoir, that's going to be done in January with a price tag of $13,038,000. The remainder of that, that's owing, is coming out of our 2026 budget. Anybody opposed to that? That's a yes. And then our sanitary trunk line phase 2, 16th Ave and Highway 845. The work was just completed, a little bit left on that one for $5.1 million. We'll finish that off in 2026. Is there anybody opposed for that? That's a yes. And then the planning for the seniors housing development for $330,000, part of our 2026 budget. Anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. And then the Rehoboth pathway for $250,000. That is almost done as well, as part of our 2026 budget for $250,000. Anybody opposed to that? That's a yes. And then finally, the skate park, 1.2 million. That project is done. There's a little carryover to 2026 to clean up a few odds and ends. Anybody opposed to that one? Thank you. And for that, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council approve the critical contractual carryovers from category 1 as presented? Councillor Pickering makes that motion. I'll call for the vote. And that motion is carried with Councillor Avery and Deputy Mayor Beekman opposed. Which one now, Tim, would you like?
Let's move on to category 2. Real quick, these annual programs that you see listed for 2026 to 2030, we do bring these items back every year for discussion. So,
okay, thank you. Category 2, service level. First item 1A, municipal fleet vehicle annual program for $375,000, and that's for our 2026 to 2030 fleet and general equipment reserve. It's coming out of for funding. Anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So I believe last year or the year before, so tonight you told us this is where the fire capital is in this fleet account, correct? Because I believe last year or the year before, the CFO told us he had doubled the amount that we were putting into a capital account for the fire equipment. And once again, I don't see that anywhere. I don't see that as a line item, but we keep talking about this reserve account. And it was substantially more than what any of these numbers are for putting away for reserves.
Thank you for the question, Councillor Avery. I can show you what was, if we can switch to the screen real quick. I can show you what was budgeted to go into those reserves in the 2025 budget for the future firing vehicle. On January 1st, 2025, that was a balance. We put 250,000 in there. Bylaw fleet capital reserve, we put 20,000 in there in 2025. 315,000 into the fleet and general equipment. This is where the fleet vehicle replacement comes out of. And then finally, you have the parks and playground capital that 100,000 was put in there.
Councillor Avery.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to my original question when I asked about the $1.2 million for the fire reserve account. So we've got it here as a line item, but when I asked, it was coming from a different line item, like vehicle fleet maintenance or something, is where we're taking or putting the money or taking the money from, but there is a line item for it. And then in this service level, it's not on here that we're putting $250,000 into this account.
Yeah, this is a 2025 operating transfer that was made out of operating. So this is a past decision that was approved, and so these.
CFO also said we couldn't take capital money and put it in operating money into capital money. So I'm really confused. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, I'm just trying to get it all.
Yeah, I'm trying to understand as well.
Especially because, like, in my head, there's $1.2 million and now $250,000 annually that we're putting into these accounts. That where is this fire vehicle and equipment line item when we're talking about putting into?
I'm not sure I understand the line item comment.
So like 1A, you're saying municipal vehicle fleet annual program. We put 375,000 away annually for that.
Sorry, those balances that you see beside the, like, where it says fleet and general equipment reserve, that's the name of the account, and that's just the current balance. It's sort of an estimated balance that I'm projecting for at the end of this year. I'm projecting that that's the balance that's going to be. So then when you minus out all of the 2026 items, obviously that balance will change, but I just use the same number across those items. I'm sorry.
So no follow-up question for you then? So Tim, just for our viewers at home, then explain what the municipal vehicle fleet annual program is. Lana, can you turn? There we go.
Oh, thank you for the question. I hope I answer this correctly, Terry. The municipal fleet vehicle replacement program is every year we purchase a new vehicle. The old vehicle gets pushed down to other staff, and then eventually at the end of the line, you get to the older assets that eventually get disposed. But I think based on the vehicle fleet size, based on the estimated useful life of each of those vehicles, 1 a year is kind of the estimate that it would take to kind of keep replacing them on a program that keeps them kind of all at the same kind of level.
Okay, thank you. And then I apologize to our CAO. Did you have a question, comment for when Councillor Avery was?
I was just going to follow up to see if Councillor Avery needed any additional background information.
No.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. And I think just for the optics of what I'm reading here for that one line there, so the 375,000, that would be an annual expense, is what I'm reading that to be, or an annual.
Sorry, that's the ones that say 2026 to 30 are over 5 years. So that's 75,000 a year.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, sorry.
Because I wasn't getting the 329,000 versus the 375.
And sorry, I just realized a typo on this one. This municipal enforcement vehicle is not an annual program, so that does need to be 2026, but I'll just change that now.
So explain what you're going to change, sorry.
Oh, sorry. On a few lines down, the municipal enforcement vehicle, CPO, 24,000, that is not an annual program. I had 2026 to 2030 in the year. That is just a single one-time 2026 ask.
Okay. Yes, okay, thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Councillor Pickering.
Thank you, Mayor, through you, Tim. So just to clarify this, according to this fleet and general reserve budget, so item 1C, 1D, and 1K would be coming out of that budget?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no more questions, I'll go back to under service level 1A municipal fleet annual program of 375,000 for 2026 to 2030. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That is a yes. Deputy Mayor Beekman's opposition noted. Moving on to 1C, the trailer replacement, a flat deck that was spoken about at our meeting the other day for $15,000 coming out of our 2026 budget from our Fleet and General Equipment Reserve. Is there anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Reese has a question.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. Through to Tim or Ashley. This flat deck trailer for the 15,000, is that not a donation?
That was the cargo trailer. So for the flat deck, if you go back to your slide deck, it is this first or second item up here. Right here. It's on page 17 of your. No. So the cargo trailer, this is a flat deck trailer that they were talking about for Parks Department to haul equipment around. Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor. On that flat deck trailer, I noticed on that thing it said that you were looking for a second one. So is this to buy two or just to get the second one? And then what size of trailer and what size are the axles? Thank you.
This is just for replacement for currently a trailer that's 25 years old. But it is a little bit of a different style of trailer. It's a car carrier, probably 24 feet. I don't have all the specific details of what we would be looking for. This is just a picture of an example of what it could look like. But it's just a replacement of a 25-year-old trailer. And but that trailer is just a flatbed, whereas we would be looking for something to carry equipment or cars. That's the only difference.
Would it just be with regular ramps, or are you looking at a tilt deck or anything like that?
It wouldn't be a tilt deck, not for the mowers and stuff that we'd want to put on it.
Just a ramp trailer?
Just a ramp trailer, very similar to that. We have one currently. That's why I mentioned a second one, because I have one currently that carries our skid steer around, or sometimes mowers, but we have 3 or 4 mowers that we could cart around the town if we had the trailers. But it's just a replacement for an old trailer right now.
It's up on the screen right now what it looks like.
Oh yeah, I know. It's just 15,000 seems like a lot for it. So that's why I was asking for some of the specifics on size of axles and things like that was all. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor, and through to Terry. So if we're replacing the trailer, what do you do with the 25-year-old trailer?
Right now, we would probably just dispose of it. It does need some work, so currently we will just the old one that we have, we're probably just going to dispose of. I don't think it has any value or very little value, and we wouldn't feel comfortable selling it at this point.
Thank you. Seeing no more questions, back to the question, trailer replacement, the flat deck for operations, $15,000 coming out of our 2026 budget. Anybody opposed to that one? That is a yes. Moving on to the skid steer replacement for parks and operations for $30,000 coming out of our 2026 budget out of fleet and general equipment reserve. Anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Beekman is opposed. The straw vote, it's carried. Thank you. Next item, the municipal enforcement vehicle, CPO1 for bylaw for $24,000, and that was to equip two vehicles with equipment. The truck already exists, and that's coming out of our 2026 to 2030 budget. Anybody opposed to that one? Councillor Avery has a question.
Thank you. How many CPO vehicles do we have in our fleet right now? There's got to be more than one, isn't there?
Currently, there is only one that's actually could actually be used as a CPO vehicle right now.
Councillor Avery.
So what do we do with the other ones that we can't use then? Because I'm looking at we should be reducing our fleet, not increasing our fleet, because if they're just there to be there, so we've got no photo radar ban, see that Citizens on Patrol are using, but we do have another vehicle that they were using for photo radar. That program is suspended. So if that can't be used for municipal enforcement, which I don't understand why not, but that can be explained to me at a later date. Do we have a pickup truck already?
We do.
So that's two vehicles, and if we're going to buy another one, and then buy another one in 2 years, that's four. Are we just adding to the fleet and adding to the fleet? So pretty soon we'll just see who dies with the most old vehicles in their front yard, or what's our plan?
Well, the other vehicle is the bylaw vehicle right now. Is being currently used by bylaw, and one will be used by CPO. I don't mean to speak for Clayton here. The two that are coming up are not additions, they're replacements. This one here will be an addition. Again, the one for 2026 will be an addition, but the two that you've seen in the future are replacements of the original. Or is it just one? The F-150, yeah.
So if Chief Rutberg wants to take a seat, then Councillor Avery can ask his question. You have anything to add to what Terry stated, or you listen to the question first?
Could you just repeat the one portion of your question there?
Sure. Thanks, Chief. And I just want to know why we keep adding to our fleet. Why do we need more vehicles for a program that is not overly successful right now? And we've got 4 pickup trucks at the fire hall, plus we've got a bylaw vehicle, plus we've got an SUV. How many vehicles do we need at one station before we start looking at reducing the assets instead of replacing and increasing our assets or adding to our assets? I get the question from ratepayers, why do we have so many pickup trucks? So I'm asking the question, why do we have so many trucks? Why are we replacing so many trucks?
Yeah, so I think that last item on there, the 24,000, was the equipment to put back into the one vehicle that's currently sitting there. So we have the truck that would be capable of being used by a peace officer. The other vehicle right now is not. So that 24 would get that vehicle back up and ready with the camera and radar that's currently not working in it. So that would get that one back up and running. And then the additional vehicle was a third vehicle in there with predicting where the program is going in the next year.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you. So once again, I'm confused. Does everybody need their own vehicle, or do people work shift work? Is it Monday through Friday, 8:30 till 4 type service do we offer? I do come from a background of that where shift work usually works better if you're going to have multiple people, and not everybody needs a pickup truck. You usually share.
Yeah, so that would be with having some of that shift work, but with the ability to have up to 3 of them on at a certain time for different events and stuff like that.
Councillor Reese.
Thanks, Mayor. Due to the chief. So is your hope then in the future that you can have 2 CPO trucks at the same time on shift rather than just the one?
Yeah, that's correct.
Perfect. Thank you. So then you're looking to have 4 by 2028?
3 total, not 4.
Okay.
The other one was a replacement.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Chief. Seeing no more questions, back to item 1J, Municipal Enforcement Vehicle CPO 1 for a bylaw for $24,000, and that was for the upgrades to an existing vehicle, and that's coming out of our 2026 to 2030 bylaw fleet reserve. Anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. Thank you. Moving on to category 2, item 1K, the John Deere terrain cut mower for our for fleet, cost of $94,000, coming out of our 2026 budget, coming out of our fleet and general equipment reserve. Anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. Moving on to item 2C, the curling rink unit heaters for 6 of them. And that's a $16,000 budget ask coming out of our 2026 budget, and it's coming out of our curling rink reserve account. Anybody opposed to that one? That's a yes. Item 3D, the alley rebuild program, the annual program under roads for $450,000. Again, that's coming out of our 2026 to 2030 budget, coming from our road reserve tax supported account. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. Item 3H, road rehabilitation annual program infrastructure, and that's at $2.5 million ask. And if I could just get someone to explain that program for our listeners at home, please. Dustin, thank you.
So this item is for $500,000 a year to be allocated to road rehabilitation. So back in 2023, we spent $1 million on roads across town, essentially just reinvigorating that program. In 2025, the money was put into the 16th Avenue project. So given that that project has now been pushed into 2026, just from a staff load, workload perspective, we're recommending to carry that money forward into 2027 to complete a larger $1 million project. So essentially this money is already going into reserves as of 2025, and we're just essentially recommending that we don't do an actual project with that money until 2027 should council choose to allocate going forward.
Thank you. Councillor Chapman has a question.
Yes, thank you. Speaking in favor of the budget item, Dustin, I guess annually you'll probably look at when you're doing road rehabilitation or major projects, you might shift $500,000 each year to that project. So if there's another 16th Avenue that comes up that's a major project, you would probably repurpose those dollars towards those projects?
That's correct. So every year, this item would come back to council for approval again, and then we can discuss how that money is allocated based on ongoing priorities. But obviously, a priority spoken by council is to improve the condition of the road. So that's what we've named this program. But I think a good way to look at it as well is when there's synergy with other projects, when there's deep utilities involved as well, that it could be allocated towards that type of infrastructure as well. But essentially, we're just trying to get this program started. As we talked about in the meeting on Monday as well, there's no concerns about not putting enough money into it, but I think 500,000 is a healthy start. And as we move forward, there's going to be new priorities that come up, and every year we'll come and discuss those with council on how we can spend that money.
Okay, thank you. Because I think my only concern is that, or I mean, my only ask, I guess, is that we ensure that other minor projects around the community, and we've talked about a number of them around 21st or 23rd Street and 23rd Avenue around the skate park, for example, could use those dollars as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, comments? Seeing none, then could I ask if there's anybody opposed to the road rehabilitation annual program? That's a yes. And then finally, item 4A, the sewer relining program, the annual program for $1 million. Is there anybody opposed to that one? That one is a yes. Now that we're completed with category 2, could I get someone to make or consider making a motion that council approves service level from category 2 as presented? Councillor Saylor makes that motion. I'll call for the question. And that motion is carried with Councillor, you took that away a little quick there. Councillor Avery opposed, Deputy Mayor Beekman opposed, and Councillor Pickering opposed. Motion is carried. Moving on to category 3, there are 12 items, and I'll do each one of those separate. And I'm just going to start off a list here. Don't follow the list necessarily that's in front of you. So the first one is the emergency management cargo trailer, a budget of $10,000. Is there any questions or comments to that one? And seeing none, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council agree to include the emergency management cargo trailer at a budget of $10,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget? Councillor Chapman makes that motion. I'll call for the question. That motion is carried. Thank you. Second item is the engine 13 fire equipment. So that's the spare truck that we want to put the equipment back on so that it could be used for emergencies outside of Coldell. And that's a $65,000 ask as part of our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Any questions on that one? Councillor Pickering and then Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. I just have one question. That truck right now is stored inside and will be stored inside from now on after it's fully equipped and maintained.
Yes, that's correct.
So it can be used for any other calls too, correct?
Yep,
All
that's
right,
correct.
Thank you.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. Due to the chief, this is the truck that can potentially bring in some revenue for our town, $40,000 a year, possibly?
Yeah, that's correct. So, again, the discussion at the Emergency Services Committee level is that that truck would be more readily available and easier to deploy, as it wouldn't take away from some of the frontline trucks within our fleet.
Thank you. So once again, could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council agree to include the Engine 13 fire equipment at a budget of $65,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget? Councillor Reese, I'll call for the question. And that motion is carried. Third item is that council entertain the Highway 845 Cottonwood Fountain and ponds carrying forward a budget of $45,000 that's left over from the Cottonwood interior ponds. I'll open it up to any questions, comments by anyone on that. Councillor Chapman.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Just thinking about the previous discussions, we could continue to keep this in reserves as an item rather than canceling the project.
The project can come back anytime, but we're just talking about for our current budget.
That is correct.
And Tim's got a comment on that.
Yes, so we did ask for a yes or a no, but council can choose to make this a 2027 placeholder item. They can choose to make it contingent on funding, or there are alternatives. But yes, this is in a separate reserve, so that 45,000 we could leave it if council wishes, and we can just change this to a future year if you would like us to bring it back, or we can slate it for 2026.
Or it can just come back on its own.
Yeah, or it can just come back on its own.
Future date, yes.
Yeah.
Councillor Chapman had a follow-up.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Thanks for bringing that clarity. I appreciate that.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryan. So this $45,000, could that be used to buy it, or is that just a carry forward like it states right here?
The 45,000 we could just choose to leave it in a separate reserve unless council decides they want to move it somewhere else or use it for something different. But you can really so there is 45,000 remaining on that project, and you can decide what you would like to do with that. But the request was for the 845 Cottonwood ponds, so I think if whether you set the 45,000 aside for this future project, you can make that decision as well.
Councillor Reese.
Thank you, Mayor. So would the 45,000 be enough for a fountain there, or?
I can speak to that. It will not be enough. So what we can do is sit on it, and then we can get proper quotes from through Russ's connections, and then he can come back and do a presentation at a future meeting for that. And then the 45,000 can just be left in reserves until we find out. So with that being said, this motion now, do we even need to make a motion for that, or is it, yes?
I guess if we're leaving it in reserves and not spending it, I don't know if there's a motion.
So we'll let the motion play out then. So the motion is that council agree to include the Highway 845 Cottonwood Fountain Ponds at a carry forward budget of 45,000 from the Cottonwood interior ponds in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Any questions on that? I'll call for the vote. Oh yes, I need someone to entertain making that motion. Councillor Chapman. I'll call for the
Mayor,
yes.
Thank you. Jordan and Councillor Saylor and I were a little confused on what the question is here.
Okay, let me explain that one more time. So there's when they did the work on the interior ponds by the Cottonwood Playground, there was $45,000 left from that. And that $45,000 can go towards a fountain now at the Cottonwood Pond, but $45,000 won't cover that. So right now, we're asking if we want to buy a fountain for $45,000, which won't be enough. But as our discussion, Russ will come back with a quotation on what to do the job properly at a future meeting, and then we can discuss this whole thing over again. So just because we're this may or may not pass doesn't mean it's the end of the project. So I'll read the motion one more time. That council agree to include the Highway 845 Cottonwood Fountain Ponds at a carry forward budget of $45,000 from the Cottonwood interior ponds in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. I'll call for the vote. And that motion is carried. So that motion is carried. So then that project will stay now until Russ comes back with an updated quote. So Russ, if you want to speak to that, please.
Yeah, correct. Correct me if I'm wrong and somebody throw something at me, but with that motion, I believe what I can do is I can go forward, get the proper direction as to what type of fountain you guys want, come back with a report for you to discuss, and if the budget is more than $45,000, which I agree with the mayor, it likely will be, we can deliberate at that time in increasing the budget. So I think we can still move forward with that motion.
Okay, thank you. And then Councillor Chapman had a question.
Thank you, Mayor. Maybe you've already answered my question. So would it be fair to, or helpful to move that line item down to placeholders, no impact to 2026, or you want to keep that in the 26 to 30 budget cycle?
I think Russ has got his marching orders now, so it can stay exactly the way it is. Councillor Pickering.
Yeah, just to clarify that, did you not say that you were carrying the money forward and then it would come back to council if we decide to do it?
Yes, so they're going to come back.
So just to clarify that a little farther, so he can go get a quote, but either way, that money's in reserves. So if it comes back to council and we say no, it's no.
That's correct.
Okay.
Moving on to the Birds of Prey paving upgrades that Dustin presented on the other night. Paving of the parking lot and doing some additional work. Is there any more questions for Dustin on that before Councillor Reese?
Thank you, Mayor Van Ryn. Through to Dustin. Have you had an opportunity to speak with Colin about whether or not he wants this to be paved, or if he wants to put it off for some years, or where's he at with that?
I have. So the timing, I guess, of strat planning to me having the opportunity to meet with him was a little tight to get this prepared. So we presented this as $320,000 as per conversations with council during strat planning. That's assuming we're going to pave the parking lot as is, making some pathway upgrades. Conversations that I've had with Colin, I guess, have opened up the conversation of can we do some expansion of the parking lot in lieu of paving? So essentially, further my comments on Monday was that I would pose this as kind of the upper end of the budget if we were to pave the parking lot. Alternatively, we could make modifications to the parking lot, leave it gravel, and then defer paving to the future. So the intent here is essentially to get council's buy-in on the upper end of the scale, and then I'll come back before we approve anything and give council options on whether that's parking lot modifications, is it paving, is it a combination of both. So either way, this item will come back to council, and it's being presented included as part of the 16th Ave budget. So again, we can come back with options, and then once we get actual pricing, we'll come back again and confirm that council wants to go ahead with it, because we don't know exactly how much 16th Ave is going to cost. Obviously, we have estimates based on the budget. But we're hoping that we'll come in a little bit under because we had good pricing on the 845 portion. So we're comfortable that there's a little bit of room there.
Councillor Avery.
Thank you. My question's for Tim and Ashley. So as we sit here and we approve all of these items, we haven't looked at operational yet. What type of tax increase are we going to be forecasting after we look at operational? And you know, sure, we can go 0 this year, but then next year is going to be what, 6 or 8 or 4? Like this is a lot of spending, and you know, we've got operational costs that have gone up just with negotiations. So what are we looking at, you know, for this term, next 4 years for, you know, estimated tax increases?
Thank you for your question. So when we look at budget, we start with capital. And the reason we start with capital is because lots of those capital items may be funded from reserves. When we pull those reserve balances, we want to make sure that we're restoring those reserve balances. As Tim talked about before, we try to keep those reserve balances consistent year over year, and ideally a little bit more each year as we move forward. What we look at when we look at operating is actuals, prior year budget, but then also growth and assessment changes. So assessment changes won't come in until probably March or April, but we can look at the growth in town and use that towards our operating budget. Based on that, and this capital budget is actually quite small from previous ones, I would say we're pretty on par that we wouldn't have too much of a tax increase this year. And then as long as we are able to maintain level of service with this budget, then future budgets would only be small increases to adjust for those levels of service. Does that answer your question?
Thank you. So based on what Dustin just shared, then I'm going to read the motion as is. But then I'm asking myself now if it's going to come back at a future council meeting for final approval, if we want to go ahead with it, because the way the motion is written, to me, it looks like we're agreeing to spending the money. And I'll just read it here. That council agreed to paving upgrades at the Birds of Prey at a budget of $320,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Tim.
Yeah, perhaps the wording should be adjusted on that one because that these two projects are planned to come out of the 16th Ave project. So I guess you're sort of approving to change the scope of those projects to include these items within what was already approved for that total budget for that project.
So how would you like me to adjust this motion? I'll say it one more time the way it is, that council agreed to paving upgrades at the Birds of Prey at a budget of $320,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget.
And then you could add at the end with funding to be included as part of the 16th Ave project.
Does that satisfy members of council? Ashley, does that capture that? And while our municipal clerk is entering that, Councillor Chapman has a question.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Maybe just through to the Mayor, if I may, then. My only question is that the motion is really about the one ask, and that's the paving to the Birds of Prey. So that would be a standalone item rather than part of the 16th Avenue.
Well,
so
sorry to interrupt, but the purpose of us giving approval for Dustin to look into this further is that it can be lumped into the 16th Avenue project, and as Dustin mentioned, we get better pricing that way.
Okay, thanks.
And I do believe if the cost comes in higher and the total budget for 16th Ave is affected, that would need to be a budget amendment to that item.
Okay, thank you.
And Councillor Reese has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. and through to yourself, I wonder if we shouldn't add that, because Dustin will have to bring it back to us either way. We shouldn't say that it's contingent on council approval for the upgrades to the parking lot.
Yes. So our municipal clerk is trying to enter that motion. So Lana, when you get a moment before, can you read it back to us, please, as amended? And while she's doing that, Councillor Avery has a question.
Thank you, Mayor. So what this motion is doing is raising the scope of that project by $320,000 to from 5.1 to 5.4 million. So if it stays within $5.1 million, we can take 320 of that and put it towards that parking lot. Okay.
Kaylin, did you have a question, comment?
Just a wording suggestion for the proposed resolution. Rather than use the word paving, I think the more generic parking lot enhancement gives flexibility to work with the most affected stakeholder, that being the birds of prey.
Lana, did you capture that suggestion from Kaylin?
I have, Mayor. The motion currently reads that council agree to parking lot enhancements at the Birds of Prey at a budget of $320,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget, with funding to be included in the 16th Avenue project and is contingent on coming back for final approval.
Thank you. Anybody care to sponsor that motion? Councillor Chapman. I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried with Councillor Pickering and Deputy Mayor Beekman against. Motion is carried. Moving on to the 18th Avenue traffic calming curbs at a budget of $9,000. Is there any further questions on that project? Oh yes, 16th Avenue. Have a typo. So I'll read the motion as is. If anybody wants to sponsor that one, that council agreed to 16th Avenue traffic calming curbs at a budget of $9,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Councillor Chapman, I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried with Councillors Pickering and Reese opposed. Moving on to the Toro Groundmaster mower. Maybe we could ask Russ to come back and refresh our memory on that one, please.
So just to refresh, that would be a new piece of equipment, primarily used at the sports fields. Currently, the sports fields are using an old wide area mower that was replaced already. We held on to because we are having more difficulty sharing equipment and still getting work done within the parks and the acreage that exists there.
Thank you. And I'll just get you to stay there to the other questions coming up. Any questions for Russ? Seeing none, could I get someone to, Councillor Avery.
Sure, if nobody else will, I guess I'll be the only one with some. So there's already two tractors or mowers being replaced, one Kubota and one other one. So can't one of those other tractors replace what you're using at the quads right now? So because if we're replacing two, we're going to have two in our extra over here in our fleet that we're going to use, not use, count one of those, go over there, and still get rid of one and still be at the same number of mowers that we've got.
So if we stay at the same, well, actually, what I'll address first is the ones that are being replaced are not wide area mowers. So if we were then to try to use them for a wide area mower job on the large spaces, green spaces in the sports fields, it would take time. It would take staff at least double the amount of time. What we're running into currently is efficiency issues, and so the reason we held on to the existing wide area mower that is past its end of life and used it at the sports field was to try to create efficiencies, and so the proposal here is for a wide area mower to be added to the fleet to keep up with the current demand.
Deputy Mayor Beekman has a question, and then Councillor Avery has a follow-up.
Thank you, Mayor. So just to be clear, this wide area mower is specifically for sports fields and has no other purpose. Like won't be used in parks or anything like that.
So this wide area mower is the style of wide area mower is best served in sports fields. It could be used in other spaces if needed, but currently the demand and the hours being used on the one that we've held on to is such that there would be very little opportunity to use it out in parks. It could be if needed.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Councillor Avery.
So the John Deere 3520, that's not a wide area mower?
It is not. It's the one that is replacing a smaller mower that we kind of call like a trimming mower type thing. And it also is the one that I believe Terry has the blade on it for moving snow. It's a little smaller, more compact, so that it can get on some pathways. It doesn't have, and it also has a weight, a lighter weight for paving blocks and things like that over here at Civic Square. And so the purpose of that is completely different.
Thank you. So I'll repeat the motion option that Council agree to the Toro Groundmaster mower at a budget of $141,000 in our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Does anybody care to sponsor that motion? Councillor Chapman makes that motion. I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried with Councillors Pickering and Councillor Avery opposed, as well as Deputy Mayor Beekman. Thank you. And I'm just going to jump, Russ, and have you give us an update and remind us about the Field Pro for the infields of the baseball diamonds. That's a groomer that the budget price tag is $55,000. So just refresh our memories, please.
You bet. Through the chair to council. So currently we have a tractor with a pull behind groomer for the infields on the 7 ball diamonds that we operate out of the sports fields. And the tractor is near end of life, and even the bannerman that is pulled by it has worked hard over the years. And so as a replacement, we've done a little bit of research, and this is a piece of equipment that most are using for infields now. It is a lower cost for replacement than a tractor and a bannerman would be. It does a more articulate job on the infields. It is more precise. It is lighter in weight, so it doesn't compact the soils at the same time. And so this is our recommendation to do that, to replace that. So.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our presenter? So I'm looking for a sponsor for the motion that council agree to a Field Pro infield groomer at a budget of $55,000 in our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Councillor Reese makes that motion. I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried with Councillor Pickering against and Deputy Mayor Beekman against. Moving on to the turf power brush for the rec center. Can you give us an update on that again, please?
You bet. So this is a piece of equipment that puts the pilings or the blades of grass, so to speak, the synthetic turf, up more upright to create a more playable surface that's more consistent with turf itself. And currently, we've been vacuuming and with landscape rigs doing that ourselves. It is time consuming and really doesn't do a great job. And so this piece of equipment would do that.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you, Mayor. So I did do a little bit of research on this, Russ, and can you just confirm this will lengthen the life of that turf as well, because we'll be crewing it and maintaining it properly?
It will not lengthen the life of the turf. It will make the turf more compatible and playable to grass because it'll upright the blades of grass. So it will not improve the life expectancy of it.
Okay, thank you.
You bet.
Any follow-up questions? Seeing none, could I get someone to entertain sponsoring a motion that council agree to the turf power brush at a budget of $17,000 in our 2026 to 2030 capital budget? Councillor Avery makes that motion. I'll call for the vote. And that motion is carried unanimously. Thank you. And then Russ, the Pinnacle Park upgrades, there's a budget ask of $450,000 in the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. So I thought the ask was $100,000 for that.
That is correct. It's $100,000. The budget was $450 and change, I think there was there. And we're being asked by the community group that is taking lead on this project, similar to that of the Kinsman in the past at Eastview Park and things like that. This group is asking for $100,000 of that to take it to the finish line. They're quite confident that they're to that point where this would do that.
And based on funding, this project will take part in 2026?
That is the hope. It is for sure. That's what they're shooting for. That's what their want is. Again, it's contingent of a little bit more funding on their part. And so that would be the only thing that would change that.
Thank you. Councillor Avery.
Thank you again. Is this something that we could split over 2 budget cycles as well?
I think the answer is yes. I think they would be open to that idea for sure.
And similar to the skate park, the town would be able to get, this is on town-owned land. And if we get a project of that magnitude, it would be like 30, 40 cents on the dollar for the town.
Absolutely. Good point.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Could I get someone to entertain making a motion that council agree to the upgrades to Pinnacle Park at a budget of $100,000? Do you want me to amend that motion?
Good, yes.
That council agree to upgrades to Pinnacle Park at a budget of $100,000 split over 2026 and 2027 fiscal years as part of our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Does that work, Ashley? Anybody care to sponsor that? Deputy Mayor Beekman, I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried. You want me to read it again? Or?
Do you want to clarify the motion again? I believe I might have typed that incorrectly.
That council agreed to upgrades to Pinnacle Park at a budget of $100,000 split over fiscal years 2026 and 2027 as part of our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. So, Tim, is there anything else that we need tonight? Oh, yes, because I jumped over all that so we could look after Russ. Are you good now, Lana? Okay. We voted on that one already.
Split over fiscal 26 and 2027 capital budgets. Part of what? So the first one, 2030 should be 2027.
Okay. So the motion is that council agree to upgrades to Pinnacle Park at a budget of 100,000 split over fiscal 2026-2027 capital budget as part of the 2026 to 2030 capital budget. I'll call for the vote. And that is carried unanimously. Thank you. Moving back up, the Civic Square, the projector mapping at a budget of 50,000 is one item that we need to talk about. The other item is the audio video system at a cost of 55,000, and then the gazebos. So we're going to talk about the audio video system first. And is there any follow-up questions from members of council for that item? Russ, you want to speak to it as far as what the capabilities of this system will do to enhance the outdoor space?
You bet, I can do that. And Lana, jump in if you want to at any point, because this would be a great question for Clayton Bargesi. But my understanding of it, certainly, and what I can speak through confidently, is the technologies that exist in audio and video here interior in Civic Square would then be extended through infrastructure, I believe, and Dustin confirmed the other day, that is already in place out to those locations on Civic Square Plaza, so that when there's an event happening either or spot, like outside or indoor, that can actually be done simultaneously inside. So it can be projected. The same audio and video will take place both places simultaneously.
So with what's going on right now with Winterfest, and then we have music playing out there, those are speakers that have to be set up every time.
Yeah, so those speakers currently are set up every time. With this budget, there would be speakers out there permanently, and we could program the music to be on at certain times, even when there aren't events going on and people are enjoying just the ice surface.
Thank you.
Yep.
Deputy Mayor Beekman has a question.
Thank you. Two completely related but unrelated questions, just on the speakers being out there full time. Sensitive electronics and erratic weather don't really mesh too well. What's our confidence level in speakers that sit out 24/7 and weather that goes from -30 to +30?
Well, through the research, I'm told by those that are more familiar with that than I am, but through my staff and Clayton Vargesi being very much a technical guy, that both with the speakers and audio and video stuff that have been quoted are particularly made for that. So I can't speak past the fact that they are made. They're not your indoor speakers. They are made to weather the storm. Locations of them also will help that, right? Like where they're at and how they're installed. But we anticipate doing everything by recommendation, by proven technology and infrastructure.
Okay. So my original question, why I originally pressed the button here was, and maybe you have already done it, but has there been any, we dipped our toes in the water or flipped any stones over to see if there's any corporate sponsorship opportunities with projector mapping, the AV, or the gazebos?
Not to my knowledge at this point. Yeah.
Welcome back, Dustin.
Just want to add a little bit of context for council as well, just through the construction of the project. So we added conduit to the locations, if you can see in your report there on the slide, but essentially on the 2 light standards in the parking lot, as well as the proposed gazebo locations. And then actually on the buildings, you can see right now there's roughed out steel boxes there that could go on the building. So essentially we put in conduit to pull wire there. The system that's being presented here essentially creates a remote connection to the amplifier and basically the system in the building so that they can play in sync with one another. There are alternative options that, like, we could essentially phase this if council doesn't want to spend that much. We could put speakers to certain locations. We could put a separate system in the Civic Plaza building that just wouldn't be in sync with basically playing music at the exact same time. So there are still options, but essentially this is the one that would allow you to play the exact same music at the same time. So if that helps give a little bit of background on it as well.
And if you could speak a little bit to the $89,000 savings to date on Civic Square.
Sure. Yeah. So when we tendered the project, I'm sure council recalls, came in quite a bit higher than we were hoping. So we went through a pretty extensive exercise of trimming off what was, I guess, nice to haves. So through that, essentially we tried to ensure that we were going to come in under budget. We definitely didn't want to come back to council and then be asking for more money on the items that we already agreed to. So we were expecting to come in a little bit. It turned out to be a little bit better than we expected. So essentially some of these items we had included in the original budget and had always intended to come back to council essentially as a menu of, we're hoping to come under, these are the nice to haves, and then now you guys can choose from the selection on which ones are important.
And then the slide is back up again, showing everything. Councillor Saylor.
Thank you, Mayor. To Dustin, do you happen to remember how much it was to fully cover that area? Remember we had looked at the like the shade thing? I feel like that would be a lot of a better investment so that, you know, we could prolong the use of the ice surface for longer periods of time. I feel like that would be better use of money first and then add something like this. Do you happen to remember like what that cost was?
So there's a very large range, I guess, depending on size and height, but particularly aesthetics. I guess, again, it's one of those things you could design as fancy as you want. Thinking back to some of the options that we showed council, I would say the lower range is in the 2 million ballpark. So it is a significant structure. Originally we had planned where the light structures or where the light standards are. We had designed to put larger piles in so that if we do put that canopy in, that those are already there. Part of the cost savings, we did delete those, but it's not like we have to rip. We would essentially just cut out a larger concrete square and then have to put in bigger piles. So that was one of the cost saving items, is we just put in smaller piles at the time. But when you're spending that much money, I wouldn't consider that as much of a loss.
And then just one other question with these 3 items there. Have you, like with the gazebos, have you ever considered just going to Costco and getting a 12 by 14 gazebo with an aluminum roof in that? They're like $3,000. So I'm just wondering why we're looking at gazebos that are $70,000.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, whatever direction council wants to go with this, going back from the original scope, we had presented what we can, I guess, call kind of the Cadillac version. And then here we presented a scaled down version. I think generally speaking, when we consider building infrastructure for spaces like this, we try to think over the long term. So that's just the headspace that we're in when we make these recommendations. But again, ultimately the aesthetics and the design of the structure are plentiful. So I mean, it would just have to come from council in terms of what they ultimately want to see.
And when I spoke to Clayton regarding if there is a priority on these items. And the top of the list that was the outdoor sound system, the speaker system. And then we can slowly chip away at the rest, or we can do it all with this budget. But if there is anything to be entertained as part of this budget was the speakers. But eventually we hope to get all of these items based on funding, obviously, of course. So, Councillor Reese.
Thanks, Mayor. Through to Dustin. I liked your suggestion of doing it in phases because I'm not comfortable spending $55,000 on audio video right now. Or where was that how much? Yeah, 55. So I think phasing it is a better option right now. But yeah.
Thank you. So the motion that I'll read off is that council agree to the outdoor space audio video system at a budget of $55,000. And this is for the sound system and the capabilities for the future projector mapping is my understanding. So, and again, I can open up this to Russ or Dustin for that.
So the projector mapping would be a standalone item. My understanding is there would just be electrical and then Cat 6 requirements to get that basically from a control perspective. But the AV would be separate, essentially just pulling speaker cable to those locations.
Yes. So this budget, I'll say again, or this motion that council agreed to the outdoor space audio video system at a budget of $55,000. That is just the sound system. And then the projector, I have that as a separate mapping, and that's $50,000.
That's correct, yeah.
Any further questions, comments on that one? So once again, I'm looking for a sponsor that council agree, for the motion that council agree to the outdoor space audio video system at a budget of $55,000 in our 2026-2030 capital budget. Councillor Reese has a question.
So we're gonna leave it at the 55,000 and not do it in stages then?
Yes, well, there is stages. So the 55,000, that's strictly for the audio, and then the projector mapping, that's an additional 50,000 at a later date, and then the gazebos we have to talk about as well.
Yeah. No, I get that, but Dustin was, I believe, saying, unless I misunderstood, that we can do like speakers first over by the rink and kind of stage it that way.
That's exactly what this is. Go ahead, Dustin.
Sorry, I'll clarify a little bit more. So the 55,000 is the QC system that essentially communicates the sounds to that building, and it includes all the speakers, so the entire package. What I was trying to allude to is that there are less premium options in terms of we could just put speakers on the building and an amplifier over there so that they wouldn't communicate with another. In terms of phasing, you could put the speakers in now and just use the amplifier over there. But I think the large part of the cost is the control system that communicates with this building. So I guess phasing options would essentially either look at having less speakers and having it communicate, or having less speakers and then just having a standalone sound system. So it's kind of, there's a couple options, I guess.
So back to the motion again. Yes, so the sound will be tied into the system here.
Yeah, that's the 55,000.
Yes.
Correct.
That's the $55,000.
Just clarify one other thing too, because pretty sure Clayton explained this too. The reason why it's mentioned as audio and video is because even though it's not the projector mapping, that the QSYS system that communicates out there, if there was an event on the skating rink and we were to use video equipment, it could be broadcast in here. as well. It communicates fully with the full technology, what's in here and what's out there. So even though so you wouldn't have a video camera out there all the time, but if there were a concert out there happening, you could communicate that with both audio and video right into this.
Yes, but the second budget item for 50,000 is if you have a permanent projector out there.
The $50,000 item is projector mapping, which is specifically, yes, a standalone, and it takes place of, rather than putting lights on a building, you can put projection on a building and
Yes.
have fun with it. So
But that's a separate line item.
it is, yeah.
So back to the sound system for 55,000 with audio video capabilities. Does anybody care to sponsor that motion? Councillor Chapman. I'll call for the vote. So that motion is defeated. Can you put that back again, please? Councillor Avery, Deputy Mayor Beekman, Councillor Pickering, and Councillor Reese are opposed. Moving on to the projector mapping, which Russ just explained, for a $50,000 price tag. I'm looking for someone to sponsor a motion that council agree to the outdoor space projector mapping at a budget of $50,000 as part of our 2026 to 2030 capital budget. Anybody care to sponsor that one? Councillor Saylor. I'll call for the vote. And that is defeated. The only ones in favor were Councillor Saylor and Councillor Chapman. And the last one are the gazebos. I don't think we need to speak anymore to those. There's two options, actually three, with what Councillor Saylor said about a Costco model. So we can either do one out of metal for 70,000, or we could do it in-house with our journeyman carpenter for 32,000. Any discussion on which way you want to vote on that one? Councillor Saylor has a comment.
Thank you, Mayor. Could they maybe come back with a comparison so that we can compare the Costco model, that is wood and aluminum, versus what for the $3,000? So if we bought two of them at $6,000 versus what the guy who would make them, so we can see the specs side by side to compare them.
If you want to make a motion to table, we can do that. Dustin?
I just want to make sure I clarify if that does go through. Essentially, we're looking at a prefabricated, off-the-shelf type option. Okay, I'll just, I guess, clarify. The challenge will just be finding something that fits those dimensions, but we can definitely look at options if that's the direction council wants to go.
If you go to the link pathway at the beginning, they just put some up there too that they bought locally from a dealer. So you want to make a motion to table that one?
Yes, please. I'd like to make a motion to table that.
Okay, thank you. Okay, anything else? In my organizations that I deal with, we don't need to have a vote on that. We got everything covered off now, Tim?
I think so. Now, would council be okay with the items that were approved to go into a 2026 to 2030 budget to be presented on Monday, and then the gazebo options can possibly be presented later, and we can do a budget amendment for if we add those in?
Okay, say that all over again in English.
Okay, so I think I have enough information to prepare a 2026 to 2030 budget that can be presented on Monday.
That's so that we pass the whole budget.
Yeah, and I would remove the 3 Civic Square outdoor space projects, and then when Dustin has more information on the gazebos, he can bring those back.
Yes. Okay, thank you. That cover everything off then, council? Okay. Thank you very much for all your hard work on that. Ashley, thank you for backing them up. That'll be it for the open portion of the meeting. So I will require a motion at 7:35 p.m. that council move into closed session in accordance with section 197-4-B of the Municipal Government Act to discuss matters exempt from disclosure for items 13.1, subject to section 19, harmful to the business interests of a third party, and item 13.2, subject to section 30, harmful to the economic and other interests of a public body. Who cares to make that motion? Councillor Reese, I'll call for the vote. That motion is carried. We shall take a 10-minute break.